Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the TBR webinar on digital transformation and the vendor opportunities. We're going to give everyone else a few more minutes to join, so just be patient. We'll try and start a couple minutes after 1 o'clock. Welcome again, everyone, to TBR's webinar this afternoon on the door to vendor-led digital transformation being wide open. We're going to wait just another minute for folks to join the call, and then we'll start just 2 minutes after 1. Thanks. Okay, welcome everyone to the TBR webinar series. Today I am joined here by Jen Hamel and Angela Lambert, two senior analysts, and we're going to be discussing the door to vendor-led digital transformation is wide open. Before we get going, we do have the housekeeping stuff to do. At the bottom of your screen, there are a series of buttons from left to right. You can access the slides, the audio controls, Q&A, of course, the speaker bios, and the survey. After we're done, you are going to get an email with a replay link as well as a link to other TBR webinars. And if you have questions, go ahead and submit them via the Q&A widget on the On24 platform. And, of course, you can reach out to us after the event as well. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and show you who we are and who's talking today. Again, I'm Patrick Heffernan. I'm the principal analyst and the senior practice manager here for professional services and IT services at TBR. Jen and Angela, you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Jen Hamel. I'm a senior analyst on Patrick's team, and I'm one of the authors on the report that we're going over today, Digital Transformation Customer Research.
Hi, everyone. This is Angela Lambert, and I'm a senior analyst and engagement manager here at TBR, and I focus on TBR's customer research.
So what we're going to cover today is digital transformation, the opportunities for vendors, what we're seeing from our customer research in this area. I want to start initially, though, by talking about who is TBR, what do we do, and why. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're a research firm and consulting firm here in Hampton, New Hampshire. And we focus on the technology sector. We focus on companies and how they actually make money, what their strategies are, what their performance is, and how those two things go together. We build up our understanding of a market, in this case digital transformation, by looking at the individual and most important players in that market, understanding what they're doing and why. And then we are able to help our clients understand what moves they need to make, both internally with respect to what resources they need to put at different opportunities, and then externally as well with what customers are saying about themselves or what partners are saying about them. And so that's basically how we build our research. When it comes to digital transformation, this is something that has actually been around for quite a while, but the buzz really sort of took over the last couple of years. We struggled a bit to fully understand how we would frame up digital transformation and what it would mean. We wanted to find some kind of understanding of the market for digital transformation that reflected not only what customers were asking for, but what vendors were trying to provide, what the offerings really looked like, the way their practices were structured. So in order to do that, we had to come up with a framework, and that's what I'm going to turn over to Jen to explain what you're seeing on the slide here. Jen?
Sure. So I think one of the first questions that we had when we started this portfolio is, what does digital transformation even mean? It's a buzzword that's been flying around the IT industry, certainly over the last year or so. Every vendor has a different definition, so it makes it challenging for us to figure out what's really different and what's just more of a repackaging of existing capabilities. So we came up with this continuum, this framework, to sort of categorize for ourselves the types of IT purchases that we would consider to be digital transformation. So we're determined it's more than just adopting new technologies to replace old ones, which is what we call substitution. An example of this would be moving from Microsoft Office on your desktop PC to Office 365 through the cloud. There's really no change in how you use Microsoft Office. It's just delivered through a different method. It's more than just bolting on new technology to an existing system, which we would consider to be extension. An example of this would be layering an analytics application on top of an existing database to generate new insights from the data, but not necessarily changing any business process. So, when we get to the right, we've determined that what we consider to be digital transformation is using new technologies or repurposing old technologies to actually evolve how a business works. And this is really more about driving outcomes, such as significantly improved efficiency or a new go-to-market model enabled by new technologies. So what this really implies is both a change in the technology ecosystem and a change in how people actually do their jobs. So kind of one of the big trends and big kind of themes that we are covering in this research is that, selling digital transformation requires engaging in conversations about your client's business goals, and then showing how technologies can help enable clients to achieve those outcomes. So let's now kind of take a look at what some of those goals are. Great. So, what we found in our research is that enterprises that say they're doing digital transformation are most likely to start with an initiative that improves a discrete business process. So here, a little bit about our survey methodology. We first asked respondents to self-identify where they land in the continuum, that framework that we just outlined on the previous slide. So, are giving them the definitions, where do they see themselves? And so the pool of respondents that we, ended up with were folks that either say that they're doing digital transformation now, or they are maybe in one of the earlier stages but have plans to, undertake a digital transformation initiative in the near future. So after we kind of got our pool of respondents, we asked which business processes are their top priorities for transformation. We had them select up to 3. And then from there, asked them to identify which process was the subject of their central digital transformation initiative. So you can see here in this graphic, we have basically 10 different business processes that we're looking at, and right here, they're ranked in order from left to right, lowest priority to highest priority based on what respondents selected as part of their top 3 digital transformation initiatives. So what the finding that I thought was most interesting here is that improving employee efficiency and effectiveness was the most selected goal overall, but it wasn't the top starting point, but it wasn't the top starting, central initiative. Rather, nearly half of the respondents to our survey are focusing on one of the next three, IT operations, CX, or product development, as their initial digital transformation engagement. So what this suggests to us is that vendors that are kind of framing digital transformation messaging around, reinventing your entire business, changing, fundamentally how you work and operate. Really, rather than focusing on, more methodical modernization of an individual business function, they really risk alienating clients that want to start small with a discrete process. But I think, vendors have an opportunity to address the employee efficiency outcome through the initial engagement. So helping, folks within the IT organization be more efficient at their jobs, and then kind of taking the learning from that and expanding them to other process areas. And this can really open opportunities, I think, in more of the lower priority or kind of longer term initiatives. Once something works really well in, customer service and sales, see how those processes can be extended to, supply chain and other areas of the business, as you kind of get those quick wins from the initial engagement.
Yeah, and I think from what we've seen again and again in talking especially to the vendors in this space is that building that trust is so critical early on. So it's not just picking the right things, it's also executing on those. And of course, it's a lot easier to execute on a transformation around customer experience or marketing than it is necessarily to do a transformation around financial management. So it's pretty easy to understand why that would come out where it does. So what we want to do now is a quick poll question. We do need to focus on the technology part of this at some point. So what technology do digital transformation customers spend most of their budget on? Analytics, cloud, blockchain, robotic process automation, AI, quantum computing, IoT, and mobility. Recognizing, of course, that in many instances, and I would actually say in every instance of any kind of digital transformation engagement, there will be multiple technologies involved. And of course, from our perspective, we try not to focus on the technology side of it so much as the business change side of it, so much as the opportunity that's there for the services vendors. But still, it's worth asking, where does the money actually go when we talk about the technology? So we're going to come back to the results in a minute, but let's talk about this breakdown here between the technology and the services with transformation in the middle. Jen?
Sure. So our survey confirmed that there's no silver bullet digital transformation solution. Rather, DT is an ongoing challenge for many firms, many customers, which means it's an ongoing opportunity for both technology and services providers. So here on the left side, on the technology side, we found that respondents' top spend priorities were cloud, IoT, and analytics. And when we look at what technologies tended to be purchased together, 4 basic combinations rose to the top. No surprise, cloud underpins most digital transformation solutions, and this is where the largest percentage of our respondents prioritize their technology spend. AI and IoT are intertwined. I think that's pretty well understood at this point. Dealing with the massive amount of data gained from IoT is a really great use case for AI because it enables filtering incoming data, acting quickly on programmed thresholds, disseminating the need-to-know information quickly, and then mining and reporting insights from all the data that's collected. Mobility, customer experience technology was another common combination. An example of this would be enabling salespeople and field service agents to deliver better customer experiences when they're on the go. So the integration guarantees that users have access to documentation wherever they are with real-time knowledge of their customers or their prospects' specific needs, demographics, and behavior. So that's another combination that we saw coming up frequently together. And then finally, converged systems, NFV and SDN. These are really enabling flexibility in on-premise environments for networking, storage, and computing. And as our friends in the telecom practice will attest, a strong network infrastructure is absolutely essential for any DT solution to deliver ROI and desired business outcomes. You really can't have a digital transformation solution without a good network, because even the fanciest application is not going to deliver the results you need without being able to access it.
Right. Jen and I are looking at each other and laughing because just this morning we were frustrated as we were trying to use some new applications we have with Wi-Fi that wasn't exactly performing at its best. And that sort of reinforces, if you don't have the network, then you don't have digital transformation. So let's see how. Go ahead. Sorry.
Just to tie up on the services side, we're seeing vendors really being able to help clients envision new business and operational models possible with DT, and then helping to roadmap execution of those plans. So more than half of respondents who engaged or are planning to engage in digital transformation are using advisory services. And this is a hypothesis that we had going in, and it was confirmed by the results of the survey. So, the adoption was slightly weighted more toward IT advisory, and I think the reason for this is, there are certainly a lot of opportunities for business consulting when it comes to digital transformation, but I think there's a lot of use cases out there, and kind of clients know that they need to transform, but they don't necessarily know how to do it. So that really is, that execution capability is really in high demand. And then as DT initiatives move to scale, the need for integration and development services increases, as well as the need for more business advisory as clients realize they need help managing the organizational change and planning their next project. So we're going to go through a few examples that illustrate how services vendors are engaging with clients on DT projects, but before we get there, let's look at the results of the poll.
So, hey, we got a really smart crowd.
Or they were
Cloud came in at the highest. What's that?
or I was telling the answers before.
I think one thing that I think is striking is where analytics plays in this now. I can recall a few years ago having conversations about analytics as a sort of a bolt-on to a lot of engagements, and it was often included in an initial SOW or included in an initial RFP, and then as you sort of got down to brass tacks and you were trying to cut corners and stuff, analytics was the first to go, and then it was the first to be added on, and so there was a sort of yo-yo effect with analytics. Now I think it's more likely it's baked in kind of all the time to everything, almost as much as cloud.
Yep. And we're definitely seeing, in our analytics and insights research, I mean, the biggest use case and kind of driving force behind just buying analytics in general is digital transformation. So right. Being able to use your data more effectively for, other business outcomes that you may have not thought about before. So.
Right. And since everybody's investing in data, you got to do something with it.
Yep, exactly.
All right, so let's talk about some use cases.
Great. So, these are three use cases and client examples that we actually highlighted in our companion report to this, which is the Digital Transformation Services Market Landscape. But I think they're really illustrative of what we're seeing, what we saw kind of popping up in the research as far as the types of engagements that clients are undertaking and looking for support from vendors. Even the biggest businesses out there, McDonald's, these two giant cruise companies, don't have the scale or the skills to kind of go it alone in digital transformation. So it's a huge opportunity for vendors to come in and support. So let's just take each of these one at a time. McDonald's, they wanted to revamp their restaurant experience using web and mobile applications. They also wanted to install kiosks in store and have more employee-facing digital services, all with the goal of creating a more customer-centric experience. They engaged Capgemini and digital agency Publicis Sapient to help them with that effort. And I think the key here, too, which is kind of really important when it comes to how we're seeing a lot of these engagements pop up, is that McDonald's actually already had an existing 10-year strategic relationship with iGate, which Capgemini acquired in 2015. So this is really highlighting that, having that trusted relationship with a client really positions you well to help them as their needs change. If you can go from an outsourcing kind of relationship to more of a strategic partnership, if you're able to kind of bring those capabilities to bear. And I think, in this deal, Capgemini actually launched a global digital retail center in Chicago as part of the deal. So that's a topic I think Patrick and I could certainly go on and on about about client centers, but it's a topic for another webinar. So I'll just move on. Carnival, they're developing a new platform that combines a wearable device, a digital experience portal, and an IoT network to be able to anticipate and personalize guest services during cruises. And this is basically enabling them to deliver an experience that they had previously only had reserved for their high-end guests, but being able, with employing digital technologies, they are able to, deliver that same experience across the board. They're working with Accenture's travel services practice, as well as Accenture's Fjord Design and Innovation Unit, and a bunch of other technology and creative partners to get this done. And then finally, Royal Caribbean started a program to digitize the guest and employee experience. They created an enterprise data practice and transformed the process of building and maintaining their ships. So it's a big project, a big engagement. They brought in EY to provide the consulting expertise, including people advisory services. So this was really about assisting with the cultural transformation that was needed for the program to succeed, and that's a huge element of digital transformation. As we're talking about process change and change in how people do their jobs, I mean, having that support at the front end is so key. So, one of the examples of what EY did was helping the cruise line to define the employee's experience in a way that would improve efficiency and communication in serving guest needs, as well as building the right mix of talent to create and run the digital system. So it was client-facing as well as back-end operational. So I think that's a really good example of kind of combining these different process areas. So it's something that may have started out as a customer experience process actually worked its way throughout the organization. I know Patrick has a little bit more exposure to that particular engagement.
I happened to go to the launch kind of party for the EY and Royal Caribbean new platform, and it was fairly spectacular in how many different ways they incorporated a digital transformation or emerging technologies or really just change into everything that they were doing, starting from recognizing that customers were going to be thinking about their trip before they even went, to pack their bags and get on the boat. And so how do you begin to have that engagement with them before they've even left home? And then little things that make a huge difference. EY and Royal Caribbean decided that rather than have any kind of bracelet or any kind of magic band or any kind of device, that everything would be done off the phone. So the clients or customers, passengers would download an app and everything would be done off their phone. And one of the advantages to that is the ability for Royal Caribbean to recognize where everybody is all the time. So simple but required things like a muster after people have been off the ship and coming back on when you've docked in the Bahamas or whatever. They can do that so much more quickly and efficiently now, and that gets back to the whole experience and all that. So it was a pretty remarkable transformation for them, and of course it's ongoing because every single time they introduce something new, the ripple effect. Sorry, I just realized I was saying the ripple effect of the cruise line would go on. So anything else on those examples? Those are pretty good.
Yeah, I think what these three examples highlight is there's certainly a huge technology component in all of them. I mean, IoT, analytics, and devices, mobile, CX. I mean, it's all in there. But really, I think what's key is what the services providers are bringing as far as advisory and kind of integration. And in the EY example, enabling the client's own IT department to maintain the system going forward, because that's something really to keep in mind. I think enabling your clients to become self-sufficient from a management perspective. I mean, yes, there's managed services revenue opportunity that might be left on the table, but think of how the other opportunity that you have to sort of start working on the next project and delivering more value rather than just running something, an IT solution like you have in the past.
Right, exactly. So I think what we've talked through so far has been kind of what we've seen with our customer research. We've talked about the way that the vendors have looked at this, and we've gone over a couple of essentially use cases. So the flip side to all this is how does how does anybody use this research? What do you actually do with it? What do you do with the insights that we have built up in the research? So with that, I'll turn it over to Angela to walk through some of the ways that people have used what we're looking at in digital transformation to actually help themselves and start to transform, I guess.
Great, yeah. Yeah, and I think to connect to what Jen was just speaking to, I mean, there's a lot of components in digital transformation solutions, and vendors are constantly coming to us with different questions around essentially how to make the most of the investments that they have and really capture the existing demand and align best to that. So the questions we're seeing align into a couple of key areas that we've outlined on the slide here, and I figured I would just talk to a couple of recent examples of questions that we've heard from clients and what we've been looking at in addition to this customer research we've been discussing. So first of all, on the opportunity analysis side, I think we really see the question of understanding when and where a market is going to pop for specific uses. As Jen mentioned on one of our first slides, there's a continuum of priorities for enterprise customers in terms of how they're going to begin these transformations. So we have customers asking us for insights on when we see these specific uses being invested in particularly in the IoT side. We recently worked on an engagement where a client asked us, our solutions can do a lot of things, but we need to align our go-to-market strategy to those that are going to be emerging the most quickly and have the most opportunity within them. So one recent project was doing a forecasting exercise to help understand within the specific segments of IoT aligning to their customers' digital transformation strategies to see what's going to pop, where do peers in the market see the most traction right now, and forecasting those specific areas that they can capture rapidly. And I think the other piece to that we see not just in IoT but digital transformation as well, as part of that is understanding the partner ecosystem within that. I don't think that there's any one company who can do this on their own, and a big question in terms of capturing this opportunity is also who are the technology and services partners that can get me there, because there's few companies who can do it all on their own. So tying in the element of partnerships with aligning to the use cases that are expected to be in demand with specific customers is a big question we're seeing right now. And getting more into the customer adoption, perception, and go-to-market enablement, I think this kind of brings us to another example of questions vendors have around how do I even talk to customers about this and align to their priorities. So that's another big area we've been looking at with clients lately. In particular, one client who's trying to evolve their hybrid IT messaging strategy to better align to their customer priorities. So that involves a lot of talking to customers, really understanding what their concerns are, what their objectives are within their industry, where they see that big impact. Like on the continuum we were looking at the beginning here, is that the efficiency and operations that are really the big thing? Is it more on the marketing side? Where are they trying to make that transformation happen within specific industries? And who are we talking? Who do we need to talk to make this happen? So we did a big investigation of that around the cloud technologies with one client in particular to help better understand how these hybrid technologies are ultimately going to align with the initiative so they can be more informed when they start having conversations and align their go-to-market. And then on the other side of that, we worked with their sales teams, helped them to understand the specific priorities of the customers, and that gets you more into the enablement and battle card type side of things as well. And I think, Patrick, you've also been working on some of the competitive intelligence aspects too. I don't know, I think you had an example there.
Sure. We did a great project recently with a technology client, a client of ours in the technology space, who had three very specific questions about their SI and consulting partners. And the three basic questions were, how do those partners of ours actually define digital transformation? Where are they investing? What bets are they placing with respect to their own resources and where they think the market is going? And then finally, the wrap it up question was, well, what do they need from us? So it's how do they define it? What are they doing? Where are they putting their money? And what do they need from us? And those were questions that our client probably could have gotten some answers from their own partners. They could have asked themselves, but coming from a third party, coming from us, meant that we also put those answers into context. So when we were talking about the SIs and the consultancies that we included in the project, we were able to say, yeah, they're investing this way in digital transformation, but that investment is a large piece of their investment, or it's a small piece, or it hasn't been performing well, or they have made acquisitions that are significant, or they're not. And when we were able to talk about what they really need from their technology partner, we were also able to put that in context as well in terms of who else they partner with on the technology side. So they may have been coming to our client for one thing, but they were going to a competitor of our client for a lot more. So that's a way we sort of, it was a funny kind of project because it wasn't really competitive intelligence. It was sort of competitive but partner intelligence, but it was so centered on digital transformation. And for me, that final question of what do they need from us was actually the piece that drew the most attention and the most questions and follow on from that particular client. So with that, we will take another look at another way of looking at this, and this comes again from the customer research side of things. Again, to sort of reorient everybody, we've got a few different streams here that we're talking about today, and we're really only kind of scratching the surface. There is a digital transformation market landscape which looks at the processes and it looks at the vendors themselves that are in the space. Then there's the customer research, which we built from interviews and from surveys to understand what the customers are looking for. And then there's also the project work that Angela was just describing. Back to the customer side of things, Jen.
Sure. So the survey indicated that control over digital transformation ultimately resides with the CEO and the CIO, particularly in the purchase phase. But the legwork in areas such as vendor identification, awareness, and evaluation is really residing at the director and manager level. So this is just kind of an example of the types of insights that we're getting from the surveys that we're doing is, it seems like a lot of the marketing right now is directed towards the C-suite as far as like thought leadership, and certainly, having executive buy-in is essential to a digital transformation engagement, but the folks that are actually on the ground in business units and are understand even maybe with more clarity what the needs are really vendors can really be vendors advocates and influence the purchase decision to a bigger extent maybe even than some of the C-suite buyers. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that. And I know Angela and I were talking earlier today that that's a question that seems to come up a lot from clients, like who should I be talking to within a client organization? So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it actually echoes a lot of what we've seen in the IT services space generally over the years, that you have to have that executive level buy-in, but the people that are influencing the decision the most are the people that are tasked with making it work.
And also, when it comes to things like change management, having the folks in the room that are actually in charge of the process and in charge of, they know the employees that are actually going to be using the solution. They understand their day-to-day workflow. So having multiple levels of the organization in the room when solutions are discussed and evaluated is really important.
Right. So we're going to do one more poll question now. We had to put this out there because we're TBR and we always look at the different vendors. So who's the top go-to for digital transformation? IBM, Microsoft, Accenture, Google, DXC, SAP, Cisco, and other. And of course, if you put other, you're going to need to email us later and tell us who you said other happened to be. But we'll come back to the results on that. Jen's going to tell us what the actual answer is. Yes?
Well, the answer is there isn't one.
There we go.
So I guess it's not even other.
That's an answer then.
Yeah. So respondents did not identify a clear favored initial point of contact. We had asked, what's the type of vendor that you would think to go to for, if you with a digital transformation project, and we had listed kind of broad groups like an advisory firm, an IT services firm, a cloud vendor, software vendor. We had listed these different types, and basically the results were even across the different vendor types. So what this signals to us is there's opportunity for every vendor participating in this market to start conversations, to frame things in the terms of digital transformation. But looking across, we had asked for each of the different technology areas, who are you working with, as well as for services. We did see some basic types of vendors kind of rising to the top from an adoption perspective. Platform and solutions-led vendors are currently leading in mind share around digital transformation. Not necessarily, these lists are not necessarily revenue or even capabilities rankings. It's just these are the vendors that popped up most frequently as far as who customers say that they're working with. So these are we see as kind of starting points for more niche vendors, so vendors that maybe focus on one area, like they only have an analytics platform, or they're only providing one AI solution, is to really think about building alliances with these major platform vendors and solutions-led SIs as a way to kind of expand your kind of market influence and your exposure to different types of clients. So just wanted to dive into one of these areas as an example, analytics. It wasn't any surprise to us that traditional enterprise software vendors are leading in adoption for DT-related analytics, and these results basically align with kind of our former analytics and insights customer research in general, which is a much broader topic than this. But we see SAP and IBM at the top of selected vendors for analytics. SAP, they're positioning S/4HANA as the digital core of customers' transformations. They've been messaging a lot how S/4HANA can be complemented with vertically tailored offerings. So, that focus on the industry need, the business outcome is key, even from a software vendor, which is kind of a newer trend that we've been keeping an eye on in the services practice. They're offering a variety of deployment models and integration with emerging technologies within the SAP Leonardo kind of brand. And they also have the SAP Data Hub, which is addressing a key impediment to effective DT and analytics in general, which is data sprawl, by having facilitating that data operations management. And similarly, IBM is emphasizing vertical-specific analytics offerings to cater to those sort of industry and business needs. Obviously, the big examples that have been out there for a while are Watson Health and the Watson IoT solution offerings, and then even more discrete offerings that are more recent, such as the IBM Insurance platform. So it's just another example of those vertically tailored offerings. And then also, just like SAP, enhancing their ability to, their data management capabilities, such as recent enhancements to the Watson data platform that improve the flow of data across, hybrid environments, and also preparing data for AI applications. And then also, interestingly, Google broke into the top 5 analytics vendors, beating out even enterprise software veteran Microsoft, which we are attributing to Google's efforts to really focus their alliance activity with SIs around digital transformation. So they announced partnerships with PwC, Accenture, and Deloitte, and actually most recently Atos. And then as well as infrastructure vendors like Intel, to sort of expand their opportunities to deliver enterprise analytics underpinned by their own Google Cloud technologies.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I mean, this slide right here, when you're talking to the different consultancies, this is your playbook for how you go after digital transformation, because you're not going to be delivering the actual analytics platform yourself. You're not going to be delivering the actual technology. You're going to need one of these partners to do it with. And right now, those are your 5 with respect to analytics in the digital transformation space. Those are the 5 that clients are going to most, are choosing among all the choices that are out there. So this is kind of and when we said the door is wide open, this is kind of the slide that we were thinking about most. So let's get the survey results now, and wow, Accenture pops up high and other pops up high.
I think that, that'll Accenture aligns. I think when we look at from the services perspective, the SI vendor ecosystem is very fragmented. I mean, This is sort of, I think, common across a lot of the different customer research streams that we have. The platform vendors tend to rise to the top of the list because, a lot of them are offering some level of services along with their platform, and they're kind of able to price things a little bit more competitively because they're bundling it with a platform sale. But Accenture, we're seeing rising to the top because, number one, their brand and just the kind of wide variety of offerings that they have and scale that they have globally. So we're certainly seeing them being used more and more and kind of setting the standard for a lot of the other services vendors out there.
Yep, no surprise at all. All right, so we are going to wrap up now to some key takeaways, and then we have a couple of questions in the queue. So, Jen?
Yep. So, as Patrick mentioned earlier, there's a ton of more detail and data in the report that we've been discussing. This really just scratches the surface. But the 3 biggest takeaways that I think vendors should be thinking about when approaching this market is, number one, know your customer. As we've been saying this whole time, there's a lot of vendor marketing out there about DT, and certainly a lot of opportunity to show clients the art of the possible. But to actually make money, you really need to understand your client's business goals, their internal cultural dynamics, and who the decision makers are, who you need to actually be talking to make a deal happen, and then to be a partner, not just a salesperson. I think that's number one, the key to being able to benefit from this huge trend that's happening. Kind of tying along with that is the think big, start small concept. It's okay to have a huge, broad, long-term vision for your client and to kind of be able to say, in 10 years from now, this industry is going to be completely different, and here's why. It's great to be a thought leader, but you have to be able to start small with the discrete business process. I think that's, a trend that we saw reflected in the data. And then finally, as we were just kind of talking about fostering that partner ecosystem. So tying back to the title, the door to vendor-led DT is wide open. Our research is showing that, all vendors can work DT into their sales discussion, but no one vendor can deliver a DT solution end to end. So understanding who the major players are in each of the discrete technology and services areas, forming relationships with key partners, is really only going to accelerate the process of bringing together solutions for clients, which I think is going to be really key to stay competitive.
Yep, and those are, those 3 things are actually 3 of the questions that we got most often from our clients. Who knows their customer better? What are the customers looking for? Which is part of why we have the customer research. When it comes to thinking big and starting small, what are those small things that people are actually looking for? And as Jen, mentioned, how are you actually going to make money? You're going to make money on building those pilot projects to scale, but they got to start with a pilot project. And then that ecosystem. I mean, we spend a lot of time with our clients talking about what the rest of their partner ecosystem looks like. So we'll take a couple of questions now and encourage anybody else to send more questions in to the queue. But right now, the 2 that we have, first, do you see more engagement starting with consulting or technology? By technology, I think what's meant there is sort of, is it a technology vendor with a technology play, or is it more a consultant that comes in and says, this is where it goes? Jen, any thoughts from what we've seen?
So I think, from our perspective in the services practice, we're certainly seeing a lot of consulting-led engagements. But at the same time, I think technology platform vendors are being more aggressive in marketing directly to lines of business and kind of positioning their platforms as, really more self-service kind of development environments that clients can really get started on their own, experimenting with digital transformation solutions and kind of thinking about how they can build applications themselves. So I honestly, I think a lot of the big, like the 3 examples we went through a few slides earlier, the big enterprise-wide transformations I see more being consulting-led just because they do tie so directly to, business concerns and, really imply a lot more of a, change management and kind of cultural transformation, but at the same time, it wouldn't be possible without technology vendors. So.
Right, and I went back to this slide because I think you can see that the initiatives on that high priority side are going to be consulting-led more than necessarily technology-led. So I think that in some ways that kind of answers the question where it sort of shows you that you're not going to do employee efficiency and effectiveness just by dumping some analytics onto your existing IT system. It's actually going to require that consulting around change management to make it happen.
Yeah, so I think, and this really kind of goes back to, I guess, the trend that we've been seeing, from the analytics research, certainly, and I think other areas too, where I think the way IT was purchased in the past, as new technologies were coming out and that, clients were getting really excited about the possibilities and kind of just buying technology without knowing what to do with it, a lot of folks were burned pretty heavily and did not see the return on investment. So I do see a lot more kind of care being taken to make sure that the business outcome and the plan is in place before kind of making a big technology purchase.
Right. All right, so one more question, and it's which vendors come close to end-to-end digital transformation capabilities? I think all 3 of us at one point said no one does end-to-end, but who comes close? Anybody?
Well, IBM certainly does from a technology and services combined perspective. They're really one of the only large IT vendors out there that is investing in not only technology platforms like cloud and cognitive solutions, but a very robust professional services organization. We've seen a lot of the other large enterprise IT vendors kind of getting out of the application services game. So they certainly stand out to me from a services perspective as being able to provide the broadest portfolio of services. That said, there are certain areas that they are getting out of, and not focusing as heavily on, like sort of that lower end, more traditional, ERP application services and things that are, not as strategic, not as strategically focused. But when we're talking about digital transformation, I think that's really where they have been pivoting their portfolio towards. So they stand out to me as the one that comes the closest. However, that said, partnerships are becoming an increasingly important part of that strategy. So they've been really building up capabilities around like Salesforce and Workday, SAP, obviously.
Right.
So, even they understand that they can't do it alone and they don't necessarily even want to.
Yeah, I think one interesting example I've been noticing as I've worked on an IoT engagement recently, talking to some of the larger enterprise customers about how they're doing their projects. With IoT just kind of being a smaller example of the whole, generally I found even within just that like one use case area, most times I've heard CIOs kind of acknowledge that companies like IBM and SAP generally do have a lot of capability and they can get them a lot of the way there, but enterprises may not necessarily even be looking for one vendor to do everything. There is actually value in a more open approach that incorporates technologies or services from multiple vendors. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
Customers can like that, and they sometimes see there's less risk in that for them as, not being so incredibly tied into one vendor and that vendor's roadmap and that vendor's commitment to their area of focus.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and I think that ties back to what we've seen actually most recently from Accenture with their Accenture Intelligent Enterprise Platform, Accenture Enterprise, I don't remember which way it goes. In any case, it's a platform that I think does exactly what Angela was just saying, which is allow a lot of different technology vendors to play all within an Accenture designed and maintained and run platform. So, all right, that's it for the Q&A. There's a few things I need to do housekeeping-wise, but I want to start off with this. Next Wednesday, we're doing another webinar. This one is titled Survival Tips in the Era of Automation-Enabled Service Delivery. That may not sound that interesting, but I know what it is because it's my colleague Boz and I that will be doing that webinar. We're actually going to be on site at a client in Texas for us to deliver that webinar so that we may have some extra insight from them as well. Again, it's Survival Tips in the Era of Automation-Enabled Service Delivery. My colleague Boz has been looking at global delivery of IT services and the impact of automation, which is hitting everybody. So that one will be good. It's the same time, same bat channel next week, 1 o'clock on Wednesday. So and you can see all our contact information here. So please follow up if you have any questions. If you have a moment, fill out the survey. Let us know if you do the survey in particular what else you would like us to cover in the future. We cover a lot of ground at TBR, from management consulting through digital marketing services, analytics and insights. We look at cloud, we look at software, we do look at telecom, we cover everything. So if you data center, IoT, I could go on and on. But if there are certain things you're particularly interested in and you'd like us to do a webinar and dive down into a particular topic, please let us know. You're going to get a replay version of this webcast is going to be available. It'll come to you by email. And again, join us next Wednesday when Boz and I tell you all about automation and global delivery and how to survive. So thank you all. And with that, that'll end it. And we'll see you next week. Thanks.